What's the quickest way you saw a coworker get fired? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Number 10. In my old law office, a firm-wide email was sent out announcing the arrival of a new employee. We will call him Paul. So Paul decided to reply all to let all of us know that he was aware of our recent legal defeats, that many people should be fired for these failures, and that his hiring was the first good thing our firm had done in years. The dude was a legal assistant right out of college with no experience. A minute after the email went out, I'd heard a crazy shout and then watched one of the senior partners run past my office towards HR. And 5 minutes later, Paul walked past with the HR manager and a security escort. He lasted less than 45 minutes. Number 9. I was working at a Denny's. They hired a new manager. They were onboarding her for her first day. Then I never saw her again and nobody had even mentioned her. After a couple of days, I asked what happened to her. I figured she was working a different shift where she had possibly gotten COVID. Nope, they just caught her smoking crack on camera. Number 8. A guy got hired in the first firm I ever worked for, turns up for first morning at work, and within an hour has emailed the entire company, 6,000 people, about his band and their availability for birthdays, weddings, etc. He was dismissed by lunchtime. Edit. Answering the questions in the replies about how anyone junior could have access to the all users address. This was back in about 94, shortly after email. It was called NS Mail. I'd assume the precursor to Outlook, was rolled out within the company. I remember not having a work email address when I joined. I don't think the IT department had yet got up to speed on what could go wrong, letting everyone have access to everything. Guys like that are the reason that at my current employer, there are fewer than 10 people, out of the 30+ employees, that have the authority to use the company_all email. Number 7. I was working at a place that made food items. You could have as many of these as you liked while at work, but can only take one home with you. A guy gets hired and takes advantage of this and consumes a bucket load of these items at work, which is fine, that's the deal. He then goes to leave for the day and security asks to check his bag. He hesitates and asks security if they could just check it tomorrow instead. They say no, and he says, I do have some items in there. I haven't left this side yet. Can I put them in your fridge? Security relents and lets him do this. Security then checks the fridge, and there are 18 items in there that weren't before. The guy is immediately terminated. Lost his job over $8 worth of products. I had this happen in my company. I kept a stock of sodas, teas, Gatorade, and beer in the fridge. Beer was for Friday lunch parties, but other than that, all employees and their guests were free to help themselves. Caught quite by accident, my HR assistant manager filling her suitcase-sized handbag with 6 to 8 sodas as she left for the day. I didn't say anything but kept an eye on her, and I think the soda theft became an everyday thing. That and some other hints got me thinking she might be up to other problems. I had the IT staff blind send me her emails. She and the HR clerk were spending half the day emailing each other. Turns out they were lesbo lovers, which is fine, but they described how they could stack boxes by the door and get away with eating each other under the desk without getting caught. We let them further hang themselves with a few more days of self-incriminating emails and fired them both. A few days after the assistant manager was gone, she threatened to sue for illegal termination, claiming we only fired them both because they were lesbos. The HR manager forwarded a few of the nastier emails, and we never heard from her again. Soda consumption went down. Number 6. I worked at a lotteries company. A guy working in testing got access to production data and printed off some test tickets with some unclaimed winning numbers. He only did low amounts, like $500, and claimed 3 of them in 3 completely different locations around town. Of course, the company was really interested in the story of someone who found a 6-month-old lottery ticket and claimed it, but they were even more interested to find it was the same person going to 3 locations. Needless to say, when they realized the guy actually worked in the company, he got pulled into a room of cops waiting for him. Number 5. Early in my career, I was an engineer on a refinery in the UK, and I was in charge of the QC lab. By law, we had to have external independent testing on the refinery fuel products to confirm they complied with government regulations. It seemed that to get a job for the testing company, you had to be an adult and have a driving license. The lab had a lot of very nasty chemicals either being tested or used in the testing or cleaning of the oil products. A new young girl turned up for the testing company and was dipping her finger into a chemical called phenol and stating that it makes your hand and arm go numb. Phenol is a severe muscle relaxant, including your heart, and can kill you at very low concentrations. 1 hour into her employment, we had paramedics on the scene monitoring her vitals and was released after 8 hours. She didn't last the first hour of the first day and the testing company was fined pretty heavily. What the hell? I studied/worked in an organic chemistry lab a long time ago, and the basic attitude was constant mild to mid-level paranoia. Like, wash your hands before going to take a piss level paranoia. Number 4. Interviewed a guy that was replacing someone who was leaving. Offered the job and was supposed to start the next day. Just so happened that we were having a going-away party for the leaving dude that night, so new guy was invited as a chance to get to know the team. New guy shows up and proceeds to get absolutely shit-faced and asks the head of HR if she wants to go back to his place because he got a vibe during the interview process. The next day, new guy is a no-show, so we were thinking bullet dodged. He shows up just before lunch, clearly hungover, making up some excuse for being late. The big boss came out and told the guy to get the F out. Number 3. When I was in high school, I used to do seasonal work at haunted houses, which I did for 4 years. A new guy that they hired was supposed to help with parking. Now, in the 3 years that I worked at this haunted house, they never once charged people for parking. It was a very dark parking lot off of a cliff, so I had to make sure no one drove off of it trying to park. This cheeky son of started charging people $5 to park. It was only found out after someone complained because they didn't have the money to go in with their friends because they had to pay for parking. I think the guy was only there a couple of hours before he got fired. At one point, a few of the super busy gas stations in my area would send attendants out to collect cash and send drivers on their way to speed pump turnover. That stopped after random dudes in greasy coveralls started showing up to collect cash. Number 2. Worked at a bank and we were robbed at gunpoint. One of the tellers was quick to tweet out, "Woo, get the rest of the day off. Feel free to visit me at work with a gun and a ski mask anytime." Fired upon walking in the next morning. Reply: not a sacking, but I used to work at a bank and another branch had a failed attempt to be robbed by knife. One guy working there was telling everyone of his heroics with a knife in his face. Turns out the truth was he was in the staff room making coffee and didn't even realize it had happened. Number 1. The boss sat her down to talk about her recent behavior at work. She whipped out her phone and started taking a video, saying that it was her right to record for when it goes to court. The boss said, "Okay, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You're fired." This was at a Domino's Pizza. Alright folks, that's a wrap for today's stories. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.